Welcome to BrandTalkk, another way to talk. We're going to talk about business. We talk about brands that are in the news, your brand. We talk about brands that you use and you love every day. We have a different point of view. There's no yelling, there's no screaming, just good old conversation.
Welcome to BrandTalkk, another way to talk, with your host, Dr. John Tantillo. And now, here is the host of BrandTalkk, John Tantillo.
Well, hello, everybody. This is John Tantillo, and I'm the host of BrandTalkk, where we do things a little differently. And as I like to say, it's another way to talk. And today we have a guest. This guest is someone who I've admired for years. And he is not only a brand original, he is one of my favorite talk show hosts. And his name is Bill Boggs. And he is a 4-time Emmy award-winning TV talk show host and producer, as well as a best-selling author and professional speaker. His off-Broadway play, Talk Show Confidential, and his novel At First Sight were recently optioned for a Hollywood screenplay inspired by his life and work. Bill, a true industry insider, has received many of the most notable personalities of our time, cultural icons, musical legends, presidents, international leaders, writers, athletes, celebrity chefs, and a movie star or two. He is currently celebrity correspondent for the nationally syndicated Emmy-nominated PBS show My Generation. In 2008, HarperCollins published his well-received motivational book, Got What It Takes, based on his interviews with highly successful people. In 2003, he was selected as Father of the Year by the National Father's Day Committee, and in 2016, he was inducted into the Northeast Philadelphia Hall of Fame. He holds a bachelor's and master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania and lives on the tranquil island of Manhattan, where he is the vice president of the Friars Club and a member of the Yale Club and the New York Athletic Club. He is on the board of directors of the Philadelphia Music Hall of Fame. He lives in Manhattan, East Hampton, and Palm Beach with long-suffering girlfriend, Lady Jane, who is also a friend of mine on Facebook. And without further ado, I would like to introduce my friend, colleague, and someone who I adore, Bill Boggs. Bill, welcome to BrandTalkk.
We all know the doctor, Dr. John. Here you are, doctor.
Oh, man. And you know, you only get better. I mean, you did another novel. And it wasn't just another novel. It was a novel about a dog. What are you doing, Boggs?
Well,
what are you doing?
I am. What am I doing? All I'm trying to do is continue to work my way through life, toiling in the vineyards of entertainment and show business. My brand is I defy category. That's my brand. People in all the areas of everything I've done who've been more successful than I, but if you put all the different things together, that's my brand. And so after My Generation, which you were kind enough to mention in that extremely long, onerous, which I guess I wrote that bio about, I must confess, about 6 years ago. There were additions to that. But anyway, after My Generation went off the air about 4 years ago, I'm actually answering your question here about the novel. I said to Jane, my long-suffering girlfriend, I'm going to write again. I began my career in comedy. Actually, a great story about Helen Reddy. Worked with her for 9 months in the 60s, well before she became known. But anyway, I began my career in comedy, and I had an idea for a satirical novel narrated by a dog. The dog essentially would be my avatar, that I'd be able to write real heavy, absurdist satire, voiced by a dog whose master is a talk show host, someone like me. And the book, believe it or not, John, I actually have a copy here. I know.
No.
It's weird.
No.
It's weird that I would have that, isn't it? But this is it here. It's called The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog, as told to Bill Boggs, because the dog narrated the story to me. And right up top, the late, great author, Winston Groom, highly original and hilarious satire. Spike is the latest canine hero to take on the literary world with tremendous results. The book came out in the middle of the pandemic, and I have been blessed. I'm not bragging, I'm just telling the truth, with great reviews. It's been a tough go because everything was canceled, the book events, the bookstores, but we're slogging along. And thanks to being here with you, we're keeping The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog in the public eye. Published by Post Hill Press. It's not a self-published book. That's an old line publishing house.
Right.
Is that it? With one question today? Are we're going to continue?
Oh, of course we're going to continue. We got another 50 minutes here. You're not going to get off free here. What made you decide to use a dog to write a novel?
Well, before I came to New York, I did actually have a life before I moved to New York in 1975. I had a show in North Carolina. It was syndicated in the South called Southern Exposure with Bill Boggs. And that success of that show is what brought me to the attention of New York people who hired me. And I left North Carolina, which was probably the most fertile creative period of my life up until about 1980. The first 5 years of Midday, we're just doing a talk show, but then we got a production company and really took off with Richard Baker and I. But anyway, on the show, Southern Exposure, I had a dog, an English Bull Terrier with a spot on his eye. That's like the target dog. And the English Bull Terrier is basically known as like the clowns of the canine world. The dog was a huge hit. The dog got more mail than I did every week. Before coming to New York in 1975, the dog was killed by a drunk driver and never came to New York with me. So the idea that hit me, and I cannot remember when, where I was, what my mental state was when I got the idea, what if Spike, who was called Spike the Wonder Dog, hadn't gotten killed? And what if he was in New York right now, and he came to New York in today's world with a talk show host master like me? So the book begins in High Point, North Carolina, where they're on a show called Southern Exposure, and he's Spike the Wonder Dog, and his master is a talk show host like me. So as Will Freewald, who wrote a review,
Oh, sure, I know Will.
yeah, he wrote a very nice review of the book. He said there's also a big element of memoir in this. I don't consider it my memoir, but anytime you write fiction, you're drawing on things that happen in your life.
Sure.
And this is fiction that's basically based in the world of television talk shows. So that's how I got the idea for the dog. And I'm writing the sequel now. Something happened, John, when I sat down to write. The voice of the dog just kind of transmuted itself through me. And within 15 minutes, I thought, wow, I've never written comedy in a voice like this. I've never done my act. I have a talk show confidential commission with this kind of humor. And
Right.
so here we go. That's what happened.
Well, that's absolutely terrific.
Thank you.
I write, but I can't write a novel. I have never tried a novel, but I
Try.
write nonfiction. But
Try.
I admire anybody that can do that. That's why I'm so taken in. Well, I'm taken in by you on so many other levels.
I mean, what I'm going to be doing the rest of my life. I intend to write basically absurdist humor and fiction for the rest of my life. If
Right.
someone offers me a television job, I will take it. But I'm in my 70s now. I've had 15 different shows. I've been working since I was 11 years old, when I was actually selling things door to door when I was 11, 12 years old, all my life. And so I want to continue working, but I'm committing myself to be a writer. I'm already 60 pages in to the sequel to the Spike book.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you now where we can get it, and at the end of the show, where we can get it. But what is it, on Amazon? Is there another way we can get it?
First off, it's available in hardback Kindle with a Audible version coming like in a month.
I love it.
You can go to Amazon and just type in Bill Boggs book, Bill Boggs, B-O-G-S book, The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog, and it will come up as a yellow cover, or any place books are sold. The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll go over it again at the end of the show.
Sure.
I promise you. But what I want to really do is get into all of those great experiences that you had interviewing these grand celebrities. And I'm going to ask you this question. Who was the personality, male or female, that impressed you the most?
I can't answer that. There have been so many people. Normally, people say, "Who was your favorite guest?" Frank Sinatra.
I didn't say that. Oh yeah. Well, we're going to call it Frank Sinatra. Go ahead.
Most. If we're going to talk about Sinatra later, I would say the guest who impressed me the most.
Yes.
Was interviewing Philippe Petit, the French high wire aerialist, the morning after he walked between the World Trade Centers on that wire.
Wow.
That's the most.
Yes.
Who impressed me the most.
Right.
How they pulled it off. There was a documentary about it. He was up there, entertained the entire city. And I said to him, how high the World Trade Center? He said, it didn't make any difference to me if I was 3 feet off the ground or 1,500 feet off the ground or 1,000 feet off the ground, 2,000. I was attached to that wire. I've never forgotten that.
Right.
That confident.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was it about him that
was it? The unbelievable faith in himself.
Faith in himself.
Oh, it's cool.
Right.
But in the middle of the night, people are unfamiliar with how they did it. It was an operation that involved a lot of people.
Yeah.
They had some sneak into Tower 2, and they're up on the roof. Then they had others, including Philippe Petit, sneak into Tower 1. They took a bow and arrow and shot a rope from the top of 1. The arrow landed on the top of 2. Once they had that, at the other end of the rope, they attached the wire, and the guys on 2 pulled the wire all the way across. Then they tied the wire around stuff up there. Didn't have this is not a circus rig.
Right.
So all rigged like that. And then they waited until daylight, and I think about 8 in the morning, out he walked on that wire. Man on Wire is the name of the documentary. So that's an example in my life. The morning after this man did this, I interviewed him. That was actually the week I was auditioning for Midday. How lucky was I? Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned Frank Sinatra, and I'm like one generation away from Frank Sinatra, and my dear friend Willie Rizzo. And what I don't really like to do with Willie is ask him too many questions. Yeah. I basically let him tell me when he's ready. Sure. And I get more about his dad, Jilly. But what was it about Sinatra that drew you to him, or what did you think was tops about Frank Sinatra, other than being a great talent, of course?
that's no one ever really asked me that question in that way. A lot of people, because I did the longest interview of Sinatra's career and the first time he was ever on a talk show, want to talk about Sinatra. That is, part of my brand that this actually happened without my asking him to come, by the way. But what drew me to Frank Sinatra was that I grew up in a household where we had a lot of music. My father loved music. My mother loved music. And I remember listening to Your Hit Parade when I was a little kid, and on the radio, then on television. And so when I entered my teen years, I had a very strong foundation of music. And it was essentially all music was pretty much the same then. There was pop music, there was classical music, there was jazz. You didn't have rock and roll. You didn't have a lot of different categories of music. It was actually black music and white music was all separated. And so then when rock and roll was born with Little Richard, Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, that was about the same time that I was going through puberty, which was a phenomenal thing. That suddenly here I'm a young kid and we have our own music. And plus, growing up in Philadelphia, look at the music that came out of Philadelphia. You had contemporaries of mine, Bobby Rydell, one of the best male singers still today, Frankie Avalon, and other singers coming out of there. So I was really into rock and roll, not at the exclusion of other music. That's so interesting. These days, people are astounded because I'm so associated with the American Songbook to know if you look in my music sources, I probably have more rock and roll songs than I have on my playlist than I have a Great American Songbook. So what happened was, I was working my first summer in college. I went to University of Pennsylvania in January. I was working my first summer in Ocean City, New Jersey, which is 10 miles south of AC, Atlantic City. And it was 1960. Sinatra is coming to the 500 Club, run by his friend Skinny D'Amato. And honestly, South Jersey was going nuts. The Philadelphia Inquirer said this is the hottest ticket to get in the world. Sinatra was doing 3 shows a night. And in answer to your question, what really drew me to Sinatra was that I've always had a certain amount of guts, not to like jump out of planes or go bungee jumping, but in some ways I'm sort of fearless. I've been sort of fearless. Would swim out really far in the ocean and stuff. That I decided I would sneak into the 500 Club dressed as a busboy to see Frank Sinatra. And a friend of mine went over, and it's a whole long story I do in my show, Memories of Sinatra show, or Confessions of a Talk Shows. But suffice it to say, what drew me to Frank Sinatra, which was a very good question, was the experience that night of being a 17-year-old kid in a nightclub for the first time, standing in front of a pillar with Sinatra like 30 feet away, mesmerizing an audience that had just had a comedian that had been going nuts and smoking and drinking. Suddenly, he has him in the palm of his hand. And the singing was brilliant. I believed him, that I felt like real emotions were coming off him. And I said that to him when I met him. And that's what drew me to Frank Sinatra, the artistry of it all.
Yeah. And when you first, did you speak to him that first night?
No, I snuck in. We were lucky to get out alive. Yeah, we snuck in. And we went back to, we were. Come on. We snuck in through the kitchen to the 500 Club, which since then has been known to be a mobbed up club. We saw Frank and we left. We go back to Ocean City. No one believed us.
Of course.
So what would you do in a situation like that if no one believed you, John?
Yeah, I know.
What would you do? What would you do, John?
Probably what you would have done. I never would have done what you've done because I was a real mama's boy. I would never have done that.
You come back, it's like 1:30 in the morning. You're there with your friends. The next day, you saw Sinatra this night, and no one believes you. So you know what we did? We went back that very same next night, snuck in again, and took pictures.
Oh wow! So later on, you met him. And what was your interactions like with him? Was it, hey kid, you're pretty good, or how were those interactions with him later in life, professionally?
Well, 15 years after I snuck into the 500 Club, I was on television in New York, Channel 5, Midday Live.
Of my favorite show. Go ahead.
I doubt that very much. You like Midday Live better than, say, All in the Family?
To be honest with you, I wasn't a big fan of All in the Family because it reminded me too much of my relatives.
You were too politically correct.
I was politically too correct even back then. Yes,
I know your type.
You know my type. I love that show because I was in college, I think I had just gotten out of college, and I was a graduate student, and you define the art of conversation. You had lunch, you had a little bit of wine. It was a wonderful, everyone loved that show. We really loved that show. Go ahead.
You're the one who remembers it. I appreciate that. So anyway, what happened? Here's what happened. You asked me about my encounter with Frank.
With Frank Sinatra, yes.
It has to do with Jilly Rizzo. I met a few friends of mine Easter weekend. I left New York right after doing Midday, flew to Vegas, and we had prior to the trip procured a couple of tickets for Elvis' first show and Sinatra's second show. Elvis at the Hilton, Sinatra's at Caesar's Palace. Saw the show. It was great. And I was wandering around. Everybody else went back to the room. We'd been partying all day and all night partying. And about 3:15 in the morning, while just walking through the casino, I ran into Jilly, whom I knew because of Ken Roberts and something I had done with Sammy Davis Jr. I had met him once or twice, and he recognized me again from TV. And so Jilly said to me, "Would you like to meet Frank?" It's like 3:15 in the morning. And instead of saying, "No, my mother likes it if I get to bed, before 4 a.m., I said, "Sure." I actually did. I was at risk. I took a risk. And he said, "Come back at 4 o'clock over in the Galleria Lounge and I'll introduce you." So 45 minutes, John. I had 45 minutes to walk around thinking this man I snuck in to see, whom I've subsequently had seen dozens of times, whose albums I were buying, who I was an #1 fan, was now going to meet Frank. And so I met him. Jilly introduced us at 4 in the morning. We had a conversation. I was completely relaxed. He was with other people. We talked for about 12 minutes or so. And at the end of the conversation, he said, "Jilly told me you have a show on 5 in New York, Channel 5. Yeah." He said, "Well, look, Bill, I don't want to promise anything, but I'm going to, this is April 1975. I'm going to be in New York with Ella and Basie at the Uris Theater in September. Maybe I'll swing by and do your show." His exact words.
Wow.
Now, John, what would you do? Once again, I'm the interviewer as well as you. What would you do if Frank Sinatra said that to you?
I don't know what I would have done. I would have been speechless, but I'm sure you gave the right answer. Go ahead.
Simply said that without even giving it a second thought, "I'm not asking for anything."
Right.
And Frank, because I wasn't. Frank took my hand down, and he looked at me with these cobalt blue eyes. He said, "I know you're not asking. Maybe I'll come."
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. That's how it happened.
And that's really the way to do it. You never impose. And I certainly would never have imposed. I would have said, as a psychologist, I was trained as a psychologist, and it's always better to say nothing than the wrong thing.
Silence can really work frequently.
It does really work.
We worked on the debates the other night. A little silence would have been good occasionally in the debate. As I woke up the next morning, I thought, "What's wrong? Why do I have this awful feeling?" And I thought, "Oh, the debate." I'm dead serious. I was so upset for the country. that this occurred in the way that it did.
Right, right. We're here with Bill Boggs. It's Brand Talk, another way to talk, which is heard every Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock on Facebook Live and, of course, on YouTube Live. And we're really, I'm thrilled to have Bill.
Thank you very much.
No, I really mean it. I told you before we got on, I got a man crush. It's what the kids say.
Can't say
It's really wonderful. So what would you say in terms of your art form? Are you a writer? Are you a painter? Are you what is your artistic brand? What would you say about that? I know you don't like to talk about brands, but I mean, how would you describe yourself?
My brand, basically, I mean, I'm perceived as a talk show host.
Yes.
But my brand, in terms of what I've done, is essentially defy category. I don't know if that's not much of a brand, but look, I've written 3 books. I have an off-Broadway show. I've done 15 different TV shows as host. I've anchored the news and done a game show. I was executive producer of the Morton Downey Jr. show.
Wow.
I helped at the beginning launching the Food Network.
Sure.
I helped put together Court TV as executive producer. I'm a person who just works in show business,
Right.
trying to earn a living and use whatever modicum of talent I have. There have been times that I've been successful, and there have been times that I bombed. But I've rarely been afraid to take a risk when I felt that it was within some scope of something I can do.
Right.
If you said, Bill, we're going to train you to be a pilot, a jet pilot, I would say no. I don't think I'll do well in that.
Yeah.
Bill, you want to be a dentist? You wouldn't want me as your dentist in your mouth.
Yeah.
But I've been able to play to my strengths. You're far better definer of brand than I. But I kind of knew you'd ask me that question. When I meet people, I meet a lot of new people. Inevitably, what do you do? I say, I'm in show business. And
Right.
that's what I say. And then well, what do you do? I said, well, I've had several different television shows. It's almost like a reflex reaction, John. How come I don't know you? Which is really not that charming, right?
Right.
That's below. Didn't you used to be Bill Boggs?
Didn't you use?
Oh, that's great. But, and that's just below. What happened to you? When
Yeah.
people don't see on television, it's like something you don't have a life.
Yeah.
But my brand is big and wide and not that wonderful.
Well, since you've been, involved in show business for many years, what do you think of social media? What do you think of digital marketing? What do you think of what is now beginning to happen, where, as we know it, network television, for all intents and purposes, I think has to rebrand itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic is, honestly, John, it's a good question. I think the pandemic has speeded this up.
No question about it.
It's speeded a lot of different things, working from home, the kind of entertainment. I think that I would be astounded if 5 years from now, attendance at four-wall theaters, movie theaters, is anywhere close to 80% of what it was before the pandemic. And I love going to the movies. I've been going to movies by myself since I was 7 years old, when it was safe for a little kid to walk around the corner and put 10 cents down and go with my sister and I. Now, a parent would drive the kid, have to sit next to the child, and then take him home. But I was fortunate enough to grow up.
Well, Bill, let me relate to you this story. My 9-year-old grandson Donovan, I was all excited about taking him to the movies, and I said, Donovan, do you want to go to the movies? And he said to me, No, they're boring. I much rather watch YouTube. I said, Donovan, you don't want to go and you don't want to get the popcorn? No, I'd rather stay at home or play my video games. It's a challenge. The kids today do not want to go to the movies. Go
People,
ahead.
people will, millions and billions of dollars will still be made on entertainment. It'll
Yes,
just be made in different ways. I mean,
different ways.
different ways. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Just like vaudeville and then radio and then television.
Exactly.
People forget the threat that television posed to movies. When
No
television by say 1953, 4, 5, movies were they were making them on giant screens, 3D movies, whatever they could do to get people in. We're seeing a version of that now in the motion picture business with the blockbuster movies, something you want to experience, on the big screen. So I think that, honestly, John, one of my favorite lines, change is inevitable.
No question about it. Yeah.
Growth,
Yeah.
change is optional. You got to see it and grow with it.
Yeah. Well, I have a saying that I tell my students all the time: ABB, always be branding, always be looking at the new opportunities that are out there, and what works today does not work what works yesterday. I mean today, tomorrow. What worked yesterday works tomorrow.
Yeah.
You have to have what I call cat-like reflexes. You just have to be able to adapt. That's what we have to do.
I think that
Go ahead.
one of my back in, I said one was about 1985. I started to. That's a while now. And I started to do a daily self-affirmation that I created for myself, where if you see me do it, it looks like I'm meditating,
Right.
and I'm just going through intentions like I am happy
Mm-hmm.
in the moment and connected in the moment.
Yeah.
I'll only do things I approve of today. One of them, and I added these is I adapt and change as necessary.
Right. 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 I couldn't agree more with you. And what I also do is I try to surround myself with very, very positive people. I do not entertain the naysayers too well, because you need positive people around you to move and to move forward. I don't know if you feel that way. I hope that doesn't sound too negative, but that's the way I deal with it. So,
Hate, there's enough cynicism and hatred and anger in society now that you need to keep positive people. You're getting enough just from the vibes.
yeah. So let me get a little personal here. So do you get up early in the morning? Do you get up late in the morning? What is your typical day like?
Well, it's changed somewhat as I've gotten older. As you get older, some older people, I'm in my 70s, have more difficult time sleeping, and others don't. I used to, back for decades, 6.5 hours sleep. I'd get up, I didn't even drink coffee, I'd be fine. But when I wrote the first novel, At First Sight, I had to get up, in order to do it, I had to get up at 5 in the morning, write for an hour and a half, go jogging, and then go do midday. So then I started with coffee, but I could survive on that. These days, a minimum for me of 8 hours sleep, many times 8.5, 9 hours sleep.
Well, that's terrific.
And I usually don't. I fall asleep very quickly. So far, we've been lucky; it hasn't happened like on the show here. But I fall asleep very quickly, and somebody got it, and around midnight. So, and I was up at 8:30. This morning, I woke up at 8:20.
Right.
At 10:15, I was in the swimming pool. So
Wow.
prior to that, I come to by having coffee, and then I had a 40-minute swim. Then I come back, and it's because the water isn't quite as cool as it should be. It's not too warm, but it's not as invigorating as, say, the New York Athletic Club temperature water in their pool. I rest and drink a lot of water, and then have something to eat about an hour after I've gotten out of the pool, and then start a busy day. I'm working on, it's going to happen again. I'm working on promoting the new novel, The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog, set in the world of television and social media. I'm working on writing the sequel to the book. So my current brand is I'm a comedy writer. That's my brand at the present.
Yeah.
Show business all these years. But now if I'm going to someone's house for dinner on Saturday, actually, it's just 6 people. If they ask me what I'm going to do, I'm going to say I've been in show business all my life. Right now, I'm a writer. I write absurdist satire. That's what I do.
I think that's
Make people laugh. I started my career in comedy, and I'm probably ending my career in comedy.
perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely perfect. I myself, I like to. I get up about 5:36, and the first thing that I do is stretch. I stretch for about 12 minutes,
God bless you.
and then I try to get to the gym and move around.
All this before,
I'm 69.
that's a good age.
69? Yes, I'm 69. Yes, I'll be 70 next year. So you gotta be moving. And one of the things that I try to do is keep. I teach. So and I'm teaching what I would call the subjects that are very relevant today. I teach social media marketing, and I also teach digital marketing. So I have my fingers on the pulse of what's in fact going on. So when I hear political campaigns talking about traditional advertising, I get a little nervous because that's old school and it's not having the effectiveness that it once had. And when people say to me things like, we're dealing with voter registration, it's not voter registration anymore. It's called voter tracking. That digital marketing helps you to understand and keep track of voters. So you can tell a lot about where campaigns are by the language that they use. And I tell my students that, and their mouths are open because they're somewhat shocked. Go ahead if you want to chime in there.
It's fascinating because I knew that by the time our time together was over, you'd have more knowledge of me personally, and I would of you. And
Sure.
I think that there aren't a lot of men your age who would continue to grow and evolve in terms of their skill sets. I interviewed years ago on My Generation show. I interviewed Maria Bartiromo, one of
wonderful person.
We were on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and we were talking about the workforce today, being nimble, getting a job. She says the one question to ask yourself is, what are my skill sets and what are the holes in my skill sets? And boy, you're a man who is helping people, patch up those holes. So good for you, John. Good for you.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that. That's very, very wonderful to hear. So do you sing?
Yes, I like to sing. I've been singing all my life. I used to vocalize all the time. I don't do that in the morning. I probably should, like I used to. But there's a lot of things I used to do that I don't do, and there are things now that I'm doing that I didn't used to do. I try to block off a couple because of the show today. I haven't been able to start writing yet. So when this is over, that's fine. But I was in a couple of music shows. I've actually earned 3 paychecks in my life singing. That's it. But I mean, if you're looking for a singer, I don't identify myself as a singer.
Right. Right.
I've taken singing lessons, and if someone said to me, next week you got to get up on stage and sing 2 songs, I could deliver the goods if needed.
Yeah.
I have the right piano player. I can get thrown off by the right, Jane. I can get thrown off by the piano player. Look, talking about singers, if I could snatch this just for a second.
Sure.
I'd like to talk a little, and you cut me off. I don't want to go on.
No, it's your show.
We read today the obituaries that Helen Reddy died.
Yes, I saw that.
Financially successful woman who had 4 or 5 #1 hits, a couple big albums, other charted songs, was a good actress in several movies. And at the dawn of my career, and she's 78 years old, so she's my contemporary age. At the dawn of my career, I was managing a comedy team named Tom Patchett and Jay Tarsis, who were 2 fellows who were working with me at the Armstrong World Products Company, who were writing comedy routines. And in order to get out of these boring corporate jobs, I said, I'll be your agent. And so I began as essentially a manager of a sketch comedy team. And those guys would go on to write for Mary Tyler Moore and Bob Newhart and write Muppet movies. And one of them created Alf. They were quite talented.
Sure, I remember Alf.
I'm off track, but within 6 months of making the commitment that we would leave Armstrong and go to show business, they were on the Merv Griffin show. They were very good, and we were a good team. I was selling them. Anyway, so in 1967, I was able to get them a gig working for a man named George Marienthal in Chicago, who had 3 theaters: Mr. Kelly's, which is like the Copa, the Midwest, the London House, which is a jazz room and steakhouse, and the Happy Medium Theater, which had shows like The Mad Show, Wayne Cochran and stuff. So Tom and Jay, Patrick Tarsis, put together a comedy review, which I helped contribute a little bit. And the 3rd cast member of that show was Helen Reddy. So Helen Reddy arrived in the United States in '66. She met Jeff Wald, whom she married and had the 2nd child with. And Jeff Wald ended up working for Marienthal, was able to get his wife in our show. Good for him. She was fabulous. So I worked 6 nights a week for 9 months with Helen Reddy.
Wow.
Yes. And I'd like to just formally state this. She was a woman with an enormous amount of confidence in herself, an enormous amount of intelligence. She had been a vaudeville performer with her parents, so a complete pro. She could do sketches. She did sketches in the show. And I always sensed that she had a sense of destiny about her. So imagine what it was like. And if you want to go to my YouTube channel, BillBoggsTV, you can see my interview with Helen, that 10 years after the show closed in Chicago and she went to the West Coast and I went off, that I was interviewing her on my talk show in New York. So I would just like to say, for all those who just think of Helen Reddy like as a one-hit wonder, the anthem, I Am Woman, can stand right up there next to My Way, as far as I'm concerned, with being an anthem type song. She really is someone who is intelligent, focused, professional, and I watched her. She sang the same 3 songs every night. She changed a little bit near the end. Every night was great. She was an angel on the stage. And in her memory, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. Well, God bless her, and God bless you for that beautiful tribute. That's really, really, really nice. You know, Bill, you keep bringing back to me that you're a show business guy, and there are so many young listeners that will say, John, why didn't you ask Bill? How do I get into show business? How did he do it? What was his secret? And you went to a great school, the University of Pennsylvania. I mean, but what did you do to get in there? What was your first job? Getting your foot in the door. What did you do?
I told you, I got out of graduate school. I was interested in being in show business. I used to walk around the house when I was 5 years old with a pencil, pretending it was a microphone, interviewing my aunt, my uncle. So I had a sense of what I wanted to do in my life.
Right.
When I got out of Annenberg, at the graduate school at the University of Pennsylvania, was looking to see if I could get something in Channel 6 or Channel 10 in Philadelphia. And the phone rang, as Sammy Kahn would say, the phone rang. I picked it up. The Armstrong Court Company recruited me. I went out. I saw the amount of money I could make essentially for writing in the public relations department. And I took the job. And that was...
Excuse me. So you started in a public relations company?
Yeah, I started in a Fortune 500 company in the public relations department.
Okay, great. And
they paid very well.
Sure.
A friend of mine named Jay Tarsus, a couple years older than I, was working for Alan Funt in New York.
Sure. Candid camera.
Yeah, and he had one child, a baby, and another baby on the way, and he was making $100 a week commuting from Coney Island. I said, look, this is a corporate life, but they pay very well. Why don't you come down here and regroup? So he went down. They hired him to be a writer in a special promotions department. He ended up sitting at a desk next to a guy named Tom Patchett. So here you have three creative people. I'm in a different part, right?
Right.
And within a short period of time, it's not, the corporate world is something it was boring. I didn't like writing press releases about the products. They didn't like what they were doing.
Sure.
They started writing comedy routines out of frustration. And this is the 60s when you had Rowan and Martin, Stiller and Mira, Mike Nichols, Elaine May. You had a lot of comedy teams. There's none out there now. Things have changed. And I heard them doing one of their routines in the hallway as I'm walking to the bathroom. And and then remember it like it's crystal clear, three secretaries against the wall. And they were doing a routine about Howard Johnson's and the ice cream flavors. And it's really good. And so I said, what is that? And then I explained they're writing these routines out of pure boredom. I said, do another routine. And it was about a turnpike guy, the ticket going back and forth. And I thought, having been in comedy in high school and college, this is brilliant. I mean, what I heard that day was written by men who would go on to write for Bob Newhart, a few years later. And I had an epiphany. This is how I got in the show business. We'll quit our jobs. We'll go in the show business. I'll be their agent. And 6 months later, they're on the Merv Griffin Show.
Wow.
Created the opportunity with two very talented people. So that's how I got in the show business.
Wow. Do you think you can do that today? And how do they do it today? What would you recommend?
It's impossible to answer a question because show business is so big and vast. I entered show business as a comedy man, right?
Right.
Today, you could become a talk show host by sitting in your living room doing it. You could become a comedian by doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You can make your own short films if you want to be a filmmaker. And the demand for content, John, is huge. It's bigger.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So someone who wants to get in the entertainment business this is the advice that I would give them. The Bill Boggs advice is, you can do it. You have to believe in yourself. I was never a manager or an agent of a comedy team. I grew up in a house where my father had a business and he sold things over the phone. I simply knew I could sell, John.
Yeah, that's right.
I knew I could sell.
Yeah.
I sold the comedy team. So the number one thing that prevents people from being successful is thinking they can't be successful. You just have to really have faith in yourself, and you have to be willing to take a risk within your skill set.
Yeah. Well, I mean, excuse me, if I could just say this, Nike has it right. Just do it. And even more so today, you got a YouTube channel. Go and do sets. Do 2-3 minute sets.
Of course.
Or comedy routines.
Of course.
Go do it. I mean, there's no stopping you. But the only stopping you, as you would say, is you saying you can't do it or no one's going to see it. Go ahead.
You're absolutely correct. It's 100% correct. So just whatever you think your strength is, find a way to use your strength. And look, while I was managing the comedy team, I worked as a substitute teacher to get extra money for the first several months. But collectively, we made more money the first year in show business than we did in Armstrong, collectively. So we did pretty well, but I was only getting a percentage of that, so I had to augment my.
Yeah. Well, you know why I bring this up? I was flashing through Instagram, and this good-looking kid had just been told he didn't get the part, and it was his third callback. You know, he thought that he had it, and he didn't get it. And what I did was that teacher kind of thing where I said, you can't give up.
No,
what you got to do is you got to keep on going.
Yeah.
And you know, the positive feedback was that we liked you. We just didn't feel that you were right for this part. We'll keep you in mind. They didn't have to say that.
No, they didn't. But
they did. Go ahead.
It's possible you can have, and I wish I could remember this. I knew someone in the business, a young person who did an audition or something, and he was so vilified by the mean casting director.
Oh yeah,
it knocked the confidence out of the poor kid and knocked him out of the business. I wish I could remember who and the details of it.
Sure,
it's very possible to have the confidence beaten out of you. I'm sorry to say.
No. Well, that happened. See, my life. I went to Catholic school. And I mean, I had rough and tumble parents, and they wanted me more to either be a teacher or to get a doctorate, or they wanted me to do traditional things. If I told them I wanted to be a performer, I'll make you a performer. So I never really had the confidence to break out and do what I'm doing now over the last 10 years of writing, being on TV regularly, doing my giving my pontificating on the issues of the day. So it took me a while to get that confidence. And what I always try to do with my students is to never create doubt, not to give them false hope, but to never give them the doubt, so at least they try.
Very good.
I'd like you to chime in there if you could.
Yeah, John. By the way, I'm sorry it's getting a little dark here. When we started, the light was good, but it's gotten dark outside, and I'm depending on the outdoor light. The clouds came over, so.
Yeah, I think we're okay, Puppy. We're okay, right? It shouldn't be a problem. Don't you worry. Unless you have to go, I don't want you to have to worry.
Jane, is there any lamp we can rig up? I don't think there really is. You'd have to bring in a lamp.
And how is my dear friend, the lady, doing?
Lady Jane is fine.
Lady Jane. I love Lady Jane. She always brings such class to the posts.
Well, yeah, I surely need that.
Hi, John.
Hi, lady. I love you.
I love you too, John.
Oh, it's good. You know what we have to do? We all have to go to Patsy's one of these days.
Well, I love that.
Yeah, that would really, really, really be good. And I'll bring my friend, I think you know Alice Fennell. She's a dear friend. Alice, she's with the Mabel Mercer Foundation. She's one of those cabareters. So, yeah. Oh, and I gotta let you know, Jerry Camerata, Dr. Jerry Camerata, who adores you from Toro College, has just entered the zone.
You mean the man who wrote the fun book of fatherhood?
Yes, the fun. He'll be so happy.
I like the book. Thank you.
Yes, that's great. So, in the few more minutes that we have, what do you think is the biggest takeaway from your book, from this novel about Spike? What do you go ahead?
Laughter. The every single review, and every blurb, everyone has said, and I'm not exaggerating, I laughed out loud while I was reading this. The point of the book, The Adventures of Spike the Underdog, is to entertain you as well as satire, pointing to human foibles, pointing to some of the inefficiencies on television and broadcasting. There's a lot in there that reflects stuff that has happened to me in my career. The dog becomes a huge TV star. What happens when fame comes into your life. But the number one takeaway is you're reading this satire, this book, for entertainment. And I wrote it. And when I had my first draft, I gave it to 6 people. People I knew who would do me the favor. I said, I'll take each of you out to dinner, 6 individual conversations. I'll take you to dinner in exchange for this. I'd like you to read the book. I'll give you a month. I know it's a lot to ask, but I want your honest feedback. I really felt that I had something. I really did. But like a new set by Jerry Seinfeld that he worked on, Jerry has to test it out. So I tested the book with 6 people, and it took me almost 3 months by the time everyone read it. Each conversation began with, I laughed out loud funny. I laughed out loud funny. So then I took the book and punched it up even more. I spent another 5 months making it better. And this book is the single best piece of work of my life.
I love it.
Despite the Underdog. I worked really hard on this. And I think most people watching know when you apply yourself with real focus, day after day after day, and try and try and try, and don't give up and keep trying to improve, you end up with good work. And so I urge people to get the book and have some fun reading it, and tell me what you think after you've read it.
And we have your contact information, so they'll be able to email you and send your comments and do all of that. And we can get it on Amazon.
Yeah, all you have to do is go to Amazon. If you write Bill Boggs book, it comes up. Or The Adventures of Spike the Underdog. Spike the Underdog. Any place where books are sold. That's it.
Wow, that
website,
go ahead.
That's the simplest way to get it. Just go to Amazon.
Okay. And one more thing. When you were growing up, did you have a dog in your life?
What? A dog?
Did you have a dog? Did you have a dog in your home?
Not growing up. I wanted a dog. My parents, both my mother and father worked. And I think that sort of militated against our having a dog. Had a lot of pets, turtles, fish, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Actually, I had a canary at one point. That was fun. But
canary.
I got my first dog when I was at college at the University of Pittsburgh. I always wanted a dog. And I've had a few dogs in my life. Yeah.
To let you in on the secret, I never had a dog because my father was bitten by a dog early. The dog that I had growing up was Sandy. It was my grandparents' dog, and I loved Sandy. It was a Cocker Spaniel. To this day, I love Cocker Spaniels, and I also like Irish Setters. But I do not have a dog. I have all to do to take care of myself. Mine take care of another living creature, but I shouldn't call them a creature. But I love dogs. I love dogs. There's nothing like it.
Sure.
Well, is there anything you want to leave us with in the next last 30 seconds that we have with this interview?
Get out and vote. Everyone should vote. Very important to vote.
Absolutely.
Vote early if you can, and get out early, so that the more votes are in, the more votes are counted, the greater the possibility of a peaceful transition of power. So I think really important to vote.
Totally agree. Bill, thank you so much. And remember to go brand yourself. It was really a pleasure. Bill Boggs, the one and only.
John, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was
Remember, you all know the doctor, Dr. John. Where did that come from?
Take care of it, lady.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. What, Doctor? Thank you so much, Bill. It was great.